415 watt bifacial panel from Sirius PV, 400 watt portable panel from Anker Solix. The rigid panel is $195 and Anker's portable panel is nearly $900. Was that $700 price gap worth it? Personally, we don't think so, but maybe after this video, you guys will, so let's find out. So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. When we review power stations, we almost always recommend you guys not to buy their portable folding solar panels, but we never really go into depth on why. There's obviously a case to be made for a foldable portable solar panel, but since we always recommend not to buy them, today we're going to explain our case against them. As always, we will leave links to any of the products we talk about in the description down below, as well as any coupon codes that we can get to help save you guys some money where possible. Or if you guys want to support the channel for free, you can make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Anyways, let's jump into it. So aside from the obvious price gap, the main driver behind getting a portable foldable solar panel versus getting a rigid panel is going to be convenience. People see a foldable solar panel and they assume it's worth the extra money. It looks like it's pretty easy to set up, tear down, and it's much simpler to kind of lug it around. But unless you're someone that goes camping very frequently, maybe you live in a van or an RV, or you have extremely limited space to store your panels and you're only planning on pulling them out after a storm or in an emergency, we would argue that that portability, the simplicity of picking it up by a handle and walking it around, is the only thing that portable panels really have going for them. Even if you broke this down all the way down to a camping size solar panel, a 100 watt foldable panel is still about 200 bucks. You can get a rigid 100 watt panel for like $50. And at the end of the day, the size comparison isn't way off when they're folded down. It's not like you're saving a ton of room storing these things anyways. So the main differences between a portable folding panel and a rigid panel of equal wattage come down to a few main things. And the first one is durability. No matter how you slice it, a rigid panel is more durable. It's got aluminum housing, tempered glass, and an EVA encapsulation. Basically, rigid panels are a giant weatherproof sandwich. Portable panels use thicker laminates. They're usually made with some sort of fabrics. They have kickstands and hinges that eventually will wear out. And common sense will just show you that things are going to tend to bounce off the rigid panels where they're going to tend to bend the folding panels. For example, hail or something falling in the yard is likely just going to strike the rigid panel and bounce right off. When you hit the folding panel, they're very flimsy, like you can grab it and just bend it with your hands very easily. So those are going to be a lot more prone to actually having an impact crack or like little micro fractures in the panels. And if you actually look at this 400 watt panel in our example, it's basically 4 100 watt panels run together. If you were to fracture a piece of that, you lose a significant amount of output from your panel. Not saying that the rigid panels cannot break or be harmed, but once a portable panel is damaged, you're basically screwed. Portable panels also have to compete with handling damage. So they're always being folded up and opened back up. They're being carried around, dropped, moved around a lot more frequently. Whereas, like you guys will see later in the video, if you're gonna use a rigid panel temporarily, you're gonna move it in and out, set it all up. It's a lot more of a solid design. So even if you kind of bring it into the garage and it slips out of your hands and hits the ground, it's not gonna bend the same way that a portable panel would, and it'll kind of bend on impact. And if you just crack the corner piece of that panel, you lose the output for like the majority of that section. Some of the smaller panels are pretty simple to set up, but something like this big 400 watt Anker panel, every time we set it up, it's almost impossible to do it alone without it kind of bending and warping all over the place. And you can literally hear it creaking and cracking as you're setting it up. And every time I do it, I just think this thing has a lifespan. And every time we set it up, we're closer to killing it. You also got to take a look at performance. Two main things that make a rigid panel perform better than a portable panel. Sure, you can argue that a portable panel is easier mainly for like a 100 watt or 200 watt smaller size to kind of pick it up and run it out into the sunshine if where you had your panel starts getting shaded out by a tree or something like that. But aside from being able to actually move it, a rigid panel tends to perform better. The first reason for that is that you'll see with portable panels, they're kind of individual smaller panels all strung together, and they tend to kind of bend and warp and not always have the perfect angle towards the sun. So if you have what's technically 4 100 watt panels and they're not all perfectly angled at the sun, they're all going to be slightly less efficient. They're also always rested directly on the ground, so a tiny weed or even a tiny baby can cast a pretty good shadow on these panels, which starts to affect their performance really easily. Something like a rigid panel, It's just one giant flat piece of glass. All you have to do, get it high enough up off the ground that the weeds and the tiny babies aren't casting shadows at it, and make sure you have it angled nicely at the sun, and the whole thing will be angled nicely at the sun, and you won't really have to worry about it. It's not like it's gonna kill the performance of the panel, but they're always gonna be a little bit better just due to the fact that there's simply one piece facing the right angle. More sun equals more power. More cool also equals more power, which is another place that the rigid panels just have a little bit of an edge. Typically, rigid panels are mounted up off the ground. They have a lot more airflow around them. They also just have a big surface area for air to hit on both sides to help keep them cool. They're not perfect, but they're better than a portable panel, which sits directly on the ground and is typically made of thicker fabrics and plastics and stuff that retains heat a lot. So typically these panels will absorb the sun, but they're also absorbing the heat, which makes them hotter and less efficient. They're also sitting right on the ground, so they're trapping that heat in a little pocket on the ground, which again is just raising the temperature of the cells, and solar cells always perform best in cooler environments. And the final thing that we really need to look at is bang for your buck. The most important thing when going solar is how much power can you actually generate. Power equals freedom, and typically people go solar to gain energy independence. So the more power you have, the more independence you can have. The more expensive it is to go solar though, the less independence you feel like you have. For example, right now those Anker 400 watt panels are on sale. You can get 2 of them for just over $1,500. You can get 10 of these Sirius 415 bifacial panels for just under $2,000. For in and around the same price range, you can either have a 800 watt array or you can have a 4,000 watt array. And convenience aside, even if you had to pay for panel stands and you had to pay for a little bit of extra for those rigid panels, you're still getting way more independence for your dollar. And for everyone that's gonna say, but the portable panels are easier to pack up and put in my van or put against the wall in my garage so I can pull them out in case of an emergency. Our solution to that is, like we said earlier, if you live in a van or you live on the road and you only need a couple small foldable panels, go get them. There's not much you can say to argue that. But if you're looking to bring panels out in case of an emergency, or you just have, for whatever reason, an array that you don't always need out, even if you live in an RV with a roof, for a lot cheaper than a single 400 watt folding panel, you can mount multiple rigid panels to your roof. You can even buy little legs that clip onto the back of a rigid panel, and you can basically slide it into your camper or whatever you're using, and you pull out the rigid panel, rest it on the ground, and the legs fold up from underneath it, and you're good to go. The folding panel, sure, it compacts to a bit less, but not by much. If you were gonna store these things inside of a vehicle, it'd be pretty easy to get full-size panels in there anyways. And when you open them up, you have way more ground to cover with a folding panel than you do with a rigid panel. A rigid panel is gonna take up significantly less space when it's opened up. If you're looking to do this at your home, what we would recommend is basically 2 things. 1, you could leave these panels rested inside of your garage and you wanna pull them out. You could get something like a Integra IR30 or the Power Racks. Those are 2 very simple systems to set up. The Power Rack's literally like a recycling bin. You can stack a bunch of them in your garage with a bunch of panels on the wall. After a storm or when you need that extra power, you throw the bin on the ground, drop a panel on it, and you're good to go. It literally takes 2 seconds. The Integra Rack's a little bit more work, but very similar. You could just stack all the legs. When you need them, pull them out, drop a panel into them, and they're done. And so if you're looking for something that you can kind of put away and pull back out, that's one route. The other thing is, since you're saving so much money going with rigid panels, buy a panel stand and then grab a couple 4x4s and some wheels from Home Depot and make it wheel around. That's what we do here at the lab. We have tons of panel stands that wheel around, and you can keep them in your garage, and when you need the power, you can wheel it out into the driveway. You're still gonna save a ton of money buying a name brand panel stand and wheels and the 4x4s and everything versus just getting foldable panels. There's lots of ways to get creative with these rigid panels, but if you want to go solar, we can't just recommend to you to go grab a portable panel when it's a significantly more expensive route to take, and you can get a much better bang for your buck going with a rigid panel. If you want solar to be accessible to you and you want the most power for your money, go with a rigid panel. If you're a daily mover and you just can't not have a folding panel, go and grab one. But at least now you know what your money's going towards, and you know that there are better ways to do it, and tons of people out there making rigid panels work because they just make more sense within a budget. So that's pretty much all we got for you guys today. Make sure you're subscribed if you are not already, and let us know in the comments down below some ways that you guys are making rigid panels work versus portable panels in different situations to help everybody else out that might still be curious. Otherwise, we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.